Jamal felt the officer before he heard him. The steady, rhythmic crunch of boots on pavement matching his own steps was no coincidence. He didn't dare turn around. Not yet. But his shoulders stiffened with the silent confirmation. He was being followed. The streets were alive with the after-school buzz. Kids spilled out of storefronts, music played from an open car window, a bus hissed as it pulled to the curb. But beneath that noise, Jamal heard only the footsteps, heavy, intentional. He crossed the street. So did the cop. His heart began to pound, a dull echo in his ears. His backpack felt heavier now. His every movement, rehearsed, keep your hands visible, walk straight, don't run, don't speak unless spoken to. The officer's radio crackled behind him, then silence again. Jamal risked a glance over his shoulder. Officer Daniels. He'd seen him before, posted up on corners like a hawk, eyes always scanning, always assuming. That same tense jaw, that same look. Jamal picked up his pace. Daniels didn't stop. Keep calm, he told himself. You're just walking home. He cut through a side street. Daniels followed. A bead of sweat traced the side of his face, despite the breeze. His fingers curled at his sides, then released. He hadn't done anything. No one had called. No crime had been committed. So why was he being hunted? His phone buzzed. A text from his mom. Let me know when you're on your way home. He swallowed hard. He didn't reply. Instead, he rounded the next corner, and Daniels called out sharply, "Hey, you stop right there." Jamal froze. Time slowed. A woman across the street paused with her stroller. A man turned from his car door. But no one moved. No one stepped in. Just him. Just the officer. Jamal turned slowly, hands raised. "I'm just heading home," he said, trying to keep his voice from cracking. Daniels stepped closer. His tone cut through the city noise like a razor. ID, now. Before going deeper into the story, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on your notifications. Drop a comment to let us know where you're watching from. Jamal's heart quickened, a knot tightening in his stomach. He scanned the street, searching for a familiar face or a way to diffuse the situation, but the sidewalk was sparse, the passers-by indifferent or hurried. No one seemed to notice the growing unease between the two. Jamal's hands clenched briefly into fists, then relaxed. He reminded himself to breathe, to keep his voice steady if he needed to speak. The last thing he wanted was trouble, he just wanted to get home. Yet, the officer's presence felt less like protection and more like a looming threat, an invisible barrier closing in around him. As Jamal rounded the corner, the sudden sound of a radio crackling to life from the officer's belt broke the silence. Officer Daniels' head snapped toward the device, then back to Jamal, his expression hardening. Jamal's pace faltered. He was no longer just a teenager walking home, but a subject under scrutiny. A man under suspicion. The streetlights flickered on as evening approached, casting a yellow glow that softened the edges of the city's harsh lines. Jamal's phone buzzed in his pocket, a text from his mother checking in, a small gesture that pulled at his resolve. He typed a quick reply, fingers trembling slightly. Almost home. Everything's fine. But it wasn't fine. The weight of the officer's silent pursuit pressed heavily against Jamal's chest. He glanced over his shoulder, catching the faintest glint of a badge and the determined set of a jaw. Officer Daniels wasn't just patrolling, he was hunting, driven by a suspicion without cause. Jamal quickened his steps, eyes darting to the side streets, calculating his options. He passed a group of teenagers laughing on a stoop, their carefree energy a stark contrast to the tension threading through his own movements. The officer's footsteps grew louder behind him, steady and unyielding. Jamal's mind raced, recalling his mother's advice to stay composed, to avoid confrontation unless absolutely necessary. He kept his hands visible, palms open. A silent plea for peace in a moment thick with unspoken dangers. The neighborhood stretched ahead, a mix of old brick buildings and small shops closing for the day. Jamal spotted a small park bench under a lamppost, a place to pause and gather his thoughts. He slowed, turning slightly to face Officer Daniels, hoping to signal no threat, no mischief. "Hey!" Officer Daniels called out, his voice sharp and commanding, cutting through the evening air. Jamal froze, heart hammering. The officer stepped closer, his eyes locked onto Jamal's face. "You got any ID on you?" he demanded. Jamal's throat tightened. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his school ID, holding it up carefully. "Here," he said softly, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm just heading home." Officer Daniels took the ID and examined it, his expression unreadable. Around them, a few pedestrians slowed, sensing the tension but unsure whether to intervene. Jamal felt the weight of their gazes, some curious, some wary, but mostly indifferent. "Why were you walking like you were trying to avoid me?" the officer asked, suspicion thick in his tone. "I wasn't," Jamal replied, his voice firm despite the shaking inside. "I'm just minding my own business." Officer Daniels didn't answer immediately. Instead, he glanced around, as if looking for confirmation or backup. The moment stretched, fragile and tense. Suddenly, a voice broke through the quiet, a woman calling out from a nearby doorway. "Jamal, there you are." Jamal's head whipped toward the voice. His mother, Lisa Morgan, emerged from the building, her stride purposeful and confident. She was dressed in casual clothes now, but the FBI badge clipped to her belt was unmistakable. "Is everything okay here?" Lisa's tone was calm but carried an unmistakable authority. Officer Daniels straightened, caught off guard by the sudden arrival. His eyes flicked to the badge, then back to Jamal, and finally to Lisa. The energy between them shifted instantly, the officer's confident posture faltering under the weight of her presence. "Yes, ma'am," Officer Daniels replied curtly. "I was just checking this young man's ID. He seemed suspicious." Lisa's gaze narrowed slightly. "Suspicious? How? What exactly did he do?" The officer hesitated, then muttered, "Just walking around." Didn't respond when I called out. Lisa stepped closer to Jamal, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "He's my son," she said firmly. "He's done nothing wrong." The crowd that had gathered began to murmur, some pulling out phones to record the interaction. The quiet community watchfulness shifted toward a heightened awareness, as if the arrival of Lisa Morgan had turned a private tension into a public moment of accountability. Officer Daniels looked between mother and son, then back at the growing crowd. The certainty in Lisa's voice, the visible support for Jamal, and the presence of her badge seemed to diffuse the immediate threat. Still, the unease lingered like a shadow. Lisa nodded slowly. "Thank you for your concern, officer. But I think we're good here." Officer Daniels gave a stiff nod. "Yes, ma'am." Lisa's hand never left Jamal's shoulder as they walked away. Officer Daniels stood stiff behind them. But his posture had changed, no longer confident, no longer in control. The crowd's quiet murmurs followed them like a chorus of judgment. As they turned the corner and disappeared from view, Jamal finally exhaled. "You did well," Lisa whispered. "You stayed calm. I'm proud of you." Jamal nodded. But the adrenaline still burned in his chest. His mother's presence felt like a shield. But the fear hadn't vanished, only receded, waiting in the dark. They entered the apartment quietly, the familiar smell of home wrapped around them, the hum of the fridge, the soft click of the door closing behind them. Jamal dropped his bag by the wall, his arms suddenly heavy. He stood at the window, watching the city lights flicker, then spoke without turning. "I didn't do anything, Mom." "He followed me like I was a criminal." Lisa's voice was steady. "I know. He grabbed my arm, I thought. I thought he might." Lisa crossed the room and placed a hand on his back. "I filed the incident before we got home," she said. "Internal Affairs already has his badge number." Jamal looked at her. "That fast?" "I don't wait for justice," she said. "I move before it slips away." They sat together on the worn couch, the quiet between them filled with the unspoken. Then the doorbell rang. Lisa opened it to reveal 2 FBI agents. No words were needed. The flash of badges, the nod of respect, and the gravity in their expressions said it all. "We're here about Daniels," one said. They entered and stood before Jamal like bodyguards before royalty, not towering but present. The weight of accountability had arrived, and this time it stood with Jamal, not against him. Lisa kept it brief. He targeted my son. No cause, no warning. This is not an isolated incident. Jamal recounted what happened, short, direct, measured. The agents took notes, recorded statements, asked for witnesses. It was professional. It was serious. Before leaving, one of them said to Jamal, "We believe you. And we've heard similar complaints. You're not the first." That hit harder than anything. Later that night, Lisa and Jamal sat in the kitchen. The file folder between them growing thicker by the hour. Witness names, old complaints, screenshots, video clips. Lisa's voice was quiet but fierce. He's done this before, and it always got buried. Jamal looked at the folder, then at his mother. But not this time? Lisa shook her head. Not this time. He swallowed hard. What if it keeps happening to other kids? Lisa leaned forward. Then we make sure this becomes the last time. Jamal sat back, a storm of fear and fire brewing behind his eyes. For the first time, the helplessness didn't paralyze him, it fueled him. The next day, Jamal walked into school different. Not louder, not angrier, straighter. His friends watched him quietly, offering nods of support. A teacher placed a hand on his shoulder. No one said much. But they knew, and so did he. That evening, as the city lights flickered outside their window, Jamal and Lisa sat together, planning their next steps. There would be meetings, investigations, and difficult conversations ahead, but they faced it with a shared determination, bound by love and the unyielding belief that justice was worth fighting for. The tension that had hung over Jamal like a storm cloud was beginning to lift, replaced by a growing resolve. The road was long, and the battle far from over, but together they would face whatever came next. The next afternoon, the tension that had been simmering beneath the surface finally erupted. Jamal was walking home from school when he saw Officer Daniels again, this time accompanied by a second officer. Their uniforms stood out starkly against the fading light, badges gleaming, eyes fixed on him with a cold intensity that made Jamal's stomach tighten. The presence of two officers sent an unmistakable message. This was no routine check. Officer Daniels stepped forward, voice sharp and accusing. "You're the kid from yesterday, right? The one we had to check." Jamal's heart pounded, but he forced himself to meet the officer's gaze. "Yes, sir. I'm just walking home." Daniel's lip curled in a sneer. "You think you can just stroll around, avoid us, and get away with it?" Before Jamal could respond, the second officer moved closer, blocking his path. "We need to see some ID." Now. Jamal reached slowly into his pocket, pulling out his school ID. His hands trembled, but his voice was steady. "Here. I'm not doing anything wrong." The officers exchanged a glance, their expressions hardening. Daniels grabbed Jamal's arm roughly, yanking him toward the squad car. "You're coming with us for further questioning." Fear and shock surged through Jamal. He struggled to pull away. But Daniel's grip was firm, unyielding. "Let me go. I haven't done anything." The street around them blurred as a small crowd began to gather, whispers turning to murmurs of concern. Jamal's voice cracked, pleading, but the officers ignored him. The situation escalated quickly, drawing the attention of passers-by and neighbors. Suddenly, a sharp voice cut through the chaos. "That's enough." Lisa Morgan appeared at the edge of the crowd, her badge flashing in the fading light. She moved with purpose, her presence commanding immediate attention. The officers froze, their aggressive stance faltering as they recognized her. "Officer Daniels," Lisa said firmly, stepping between him and Jamal. "Release him immediately." Daniels hesitated, then sneered. "Mind your own business, Agent Morgan." Lisa's eyes narrowed, her tone icy. "This is my son. You have no right to detain him without cause." The officer's defiance wavered under her unwavering gaze. "He was acting suspiciously," Daniels said, voice lowering. "We were just doing our job." Lisa shook her head slowly. "Suspicion is not a license to harass and intimidate. You will release Jamal right now, or I will report this incident to your superiors and take legal action." The crowd around them murmured louder, some pulling out phones to record the confrontation. The shift in power was palpable. Lisa's calm authority and visible credentials transformed the scene from a one-sided interrogation into a public spectacle demanding accountability. Daniels glared but finally released Jamal's arm. The second officer stepped back, avoiding eye contact. Lisa turned to Jamal, placing a protective arm around his shoulders. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Jamal nodded, swallowing hard but steady. "I'm fine, Mom." Lisa's gaze swept the crowd. "Thank you all for witnessing this. It's important that these abuses of power don't go unnoticed." As the officers retreated to their car, Lisa pulled out her phone, already dialing. "This isn't over," she said quietly. "We have everything we need to make sure they answer for this." The video of Officer Daniels detaining Jamal swept across social media in a matter of hours. By morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Local news anchors called it an abuse of power. Activists called it another pattern exposed. Parents called it the fear we live with every day. At school, students whispered Jamal's name like it belonged in headlines. Some teachers offered quiet support, others avoided eye contact, but no one could ignore what happened. At home, Lisa didn't waste a second. Her fingers flew across her laptop, coordinating with civil rights attorneys, community leaders, and her FBI unit. Within 24 hours, Officer Daniels was placed on administrative leave. Within 72, a formal investigation was announced. Lisa paced the kitchen, briefing Jamal in between calls. "We're compiling every prior complaint. Body cam footage. Past victims. Daniels doesn't just have a record. He has a pattern. And we're exposing all of it." Jamal nodded. "Do they believe us?" "They don't have to believe us," Lisa said. "We have evidence." That weekend, Lisa and Jamal attended a packed town hall meeting. Residents filled the local rec center, many holding hand-painted signs. "Justice for Jamal. Protect our youth. Fire Daniels now." Lorraine Carter, a longtime community organizer, stood at the podium and read from a growing list of complaints against Daniels. Other parents shared their stories. Some broke down, some stood silent with shaking hands. When Jamal was called to speak, he hesitated, then stepped forward. "I didn't want to be here like this," he said. "I was just walking home. But I'm not the only one. And I won't be the last. Unless we stop pretending this is rare." The applause wasn't thunderous. It was solemn, earnest, real. It meant something. 3 weeks later, the department issued its final statement. Officer Daniels and his partner were both suspended without pay pending termination. Formal charges were filed for excessive force, racial profiling, and abuse of authority. Lisa received the alert mid-morning. She showed it to Jamal wordlessly. He read the email twice, then again. "Does this mean it's over?" he asked. Lisa shook her head. "No, but it means they listened, and they acted." That night, they sat side by side on the couch, not speaking, just breathing in the silence they had earned. Jamal finally broke it. "You always said to stay calm." "But I was angry." Lisa nodded. "So was I." He looked at her. "You never showed it." "I show it like this," she said, tapping the case file. "With evidence, with pressure, with results." Outside, the world hadn't changed overnight. But inside that apartment, something had shifted. Trust had been tested. Justice had answered. And accountability had finally arrived. Lisa reached over, resting her hand over Jamal's. "You've been incredibly brave," she said softly. "Not just for yourself, but for everyone who needs a voice." Jamal gave a tired smile. "I couldn't have done it without you." She squeezed his hand. "We're in this together, and we're not done yet." If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.